What is up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about 5 of my favorite 5G smartphones that you can pick up in that $400 price range. So let's go ahead and get started here. We got the Moto G Stylus here, and pretty awesome little mid-ranger here. I really like this phone just for the simple user that really wants to navigate their phone with the stylus. Maybe you want to do digital drawing on your phone or something like that. This is a phone that you can definitely get away with on. So you do have on here just a pretty much a plastic design. It's nothing too fancy. It has a water repellent coating on here as well. Overall, it's a pretty nice looking phone. You do have a massive 6.8-inch IPS display. It is 1080p 387 for the PPI on here. It does have the punch hole on the left hand side. Overall, I did not have an issue with the display. I wish it was, an OLED panel, but overall, it got, fairly bright and was pretty colorful. So you also have on here Android 11, and I think that's also another highlight with this phone is most Motorola phones have pretty much a stock Android feel to it. They have very little, skin to them. So I really like that about this phone. It has the Snapdragon 480 chip and the Adreno 619 chip on it. So basically, it's going to be pretty much, just an average, tier phone when it comes to gaming and stuff like that. I was able to play games casually on here, no problem. So if you're a casual gamer, you shouldn't have any issue here. You do have micro SD support, 128 gigs of internal storage and 4 gigs of RAM on this guy, or 256 and 6 gigs of RAM depending on your configuration. This phone also has on here a headphone jack and a single firing speaker, and you also have on here no NFC, so do note that there is no NFC for mobile payments. And you have your physical fingerprint scanner on here, works perfectly fine on here. The cameras on here are also pretty decent. You get a quad camera setup, a 48 megapixel standard, an 8 megapixel ultra wide, a 5 megapixel macro, and a 2 megapixel depth sensor. You also get 1080p with a 16 megapixel selfie cam that shoots in 1080p. Image quality is pretty good on this phone, so I did not have really any complaints for a mid-ranger like this. This phone also has a massive 5,000 milliamp battery on here, and the battery does last all day, so it's definitely one of those all-day phones. It does have 10-watt charging, which is a little bit slow, but overall I think this is a solid package for anybody looking for a phone with a built-in stylus. Next is the LG V60, and this phone is just at a disgusting price right now at $350, and all links will be down below. This phone is just outstanding for the price point here. You have just a tank of a design, an aluminum frame, glass back on here, IP68 dust and water resistant. It is just a really solid and well built phone. It's one of my favorite things about this design. It is a 6.8-inch OLED panel with HDR10 plus. 1080p 395 for the PPI with a water drop notch on here. Display is perfectly fine, super bright. Like I said, just a massive display on here as well, and just no issues. You can attach a dual screen case to this phone as well for like an extra $100, and you can have that full multitasking experience, which is pretty cool. This phone is running Android 11 with the Snapdragon 865 chip and the Adreno 650. Basically a flagship chipset on here, guys. So you'll be gaming at high settings. It pretty much blows through anything. It's really good with multitasking. Micro SD support, 128 gigs of internal storage and 8 gigs of RAM on the base model. You also have on here some extremely loud and very good stereo speakers on here with a 3.5mm headphone jack with a quad DAC, so you're just going to get an awesome audio experience. You do have on here NFC as well as a under the display fingerprint sensor as well, which is really nice too. So this phone also has really good camera setup, a 64 megapixel standard, a 13 megapixel ultra wide with a 0.3 depth sensor. You also get 8K video and a 10 megapixel selfie that shoots in 4K. Overall, you're getting some very good images on here as well. Zero complaints with image quality, especially at this price point. Now the V60 also has a massive battery at 5,000 milliamps. You also have wireless charging on board too, so this phone just has excellent battery life as well. So overall, the V60 is a really great option. Next is the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE. This is also a great phone for $400. It's got a metal rails on it with a plastic matted back on here. So the design is pretty decent, and I really like the color options that you get with this phone. So you do have IP68 dust and water resistant on this phone, as well as a Super AMOLED 120 hertz panel with HDR10 Plus at 6.5 inches, 1080p for the panel, 407 for the PPI. Overall, just a really nice display with the punch hole, just super bright, very colorful Samsung display. We're running Android 11 on top of One UI with the Snapdragon 865 chip and Adreno 650. Again, a very powerful phone, can play pretty much any game, max settings, so it's just gonna blow through games if you're a gamer. You also have micro SD support, as well as 128 gigs of internal storage, 6 or 8 gigs of RAM depending on your configuration. You also have stereo speaker setup as well, which sounds pretty good. No headphone jack on this phone. You do have NFC on board with a under the display fingerprint sensor as well, and this phone has very good cameras on it. You have a 12 megapixel standard and an 8 megapixel telephoto, 12 megapixel ultra wide with 4K video, and also a 32 megapixel selfie with 4K video. Just the overall image quality is going to be pretty much almost flagship level quality here, so you're really not missing out as far as image quality. I think for $400 you're getting a really good camera setup. You also have on here a very big 4500 milliamp battery with 25 watt charging, with wireless charging and reverse wireless charging as well, which is really nice. So you can charge another device on the back of this device, which is pretty cool. So overall, I think the S20 FE is just a very solid buy. Alright, so next we got the OnePlus 7T Pro. So basically, if you're a fan of the 7 Pro, you can upgrade to this 7T Pro for the 5G. And it's pretty much the same, you know, everything really. So you do have a glass back on here, aluminum frame on here. It is water resistant, it's just not official. You do have a fluid AMOLED 90 hertz HDR10 Plus display, and the highlight with this phone is a full display, no notch, no punch hole. Very thin bezels on here at 6.67 inches. It's 1440p, 516 for the PPI. Overall, just a beautiful display. So just zero issues with display on here. It's a really great display. You have Android 11 with the latest version of Oxygen OS. Oxygen OS, one of my favorite skins, keeps things very simple, but also it does throw in a good amount of customizable things that you can do. You have the Snapdragon 855 Plus chip, the Adreno 640 on here as well. No SD card support, 256 gigs of internal storage and 8 gigs of RAM. Overall, this is a very powerful phone still. You can still do gaming on here. I have a ton of videos with the OnePlus 7 Pro. And yeah, you're going to get the same, if not slightly better performance with the 7T Pro. You do have on here a really good pair of stereo speakers as well, which is really nice. It has a really good bass quality. No headphone jack on here. You do have NFC on board with a very fast and snappy under the display fingerprint sensor as well, which is really nice. The camera setup is just decent on here. I think still in 2021 going into 2022, I think it's still decent, especially at this price. Is it the best on this list? No, but you know, it's decent. So you do have a 48 megapixel standard, an 8 megapixel telephoto, a 16 megapixel ultra wide with 4K video, and then you have a pop-up selfie cam, a 16 megapixel with 1080p. Like I said, overall, it's a decent shot. If you're in good lighting, you can definitely get, you know, a great shot with this phone. You do have a 4085 milliamp battery with 30 watt charging on here. Battery life, I can usually squeeze a day out of mine, no issue. So battery life is not really an issue on this phone. You can definitely squeeze 6-7 hours of screen on time. And last on the list is the Samsung Galaxy A52 5G. This is just an awesome mid-ranger in general. So you do have a plastic design on here. I actually really do like the plastic design, and the color options I think are really nice. You have an IP67 dust and water resistant rating on here, a Super AMOLED display at 120 Hz at 6.5 inches, 1080p 407 for the PPI. Overall, just a really nice and solid panel on here. It gives out some great colors. You do have Android 11 with One UI 3.1, the Snapdragon 750G and Adreno 619 chipset on here. It's a mid-range chip, so you can expect mid-range performance as far as gaming. You know, just casual gaming is going to be fine on here. I do have gaming tests on pretty much all of these phones, so be sure to check that out. You do have micro SD support and 128 gigs of internal storage, as well as 6 or 8 gigs of RAM. So you do have stereo speakers on this phone, which sound great. Headphone jack is still on board. NFC is still on board with this phone, and you get a under the display fingerprint sensor as well. So this phone does have a very good camera setup. So it's a quad camera setup, 64 megapixel standard, 12 megapixel ultra wide with a 5 megapixel macro in-depth sensor. You also get 4K video with a 32 megapixel selfie cam that shoots in 4K. So overall image quality, I was super happy with how the photos came out with this phone. Color accuracy, detail, all of that stuff was just really great on here. So for the price, I think you're getting a solid camera. You do have on here a 4,500 milliamp battery with 25 watt charging. Basically battery life is going to be pretty good on here. I was able to get through all day. You're looking at around 6 hours 30 minutes of screen on time, which is definitely enough for the average person. So thanks for watching this video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.